They want attacking, purposeful football all the time. Now we've got our backs against the wall and we're going to fight, and we're going to fight hard. You've got to show me all the guts and all the determination you've got in your body. You've got to inspire me.
A marvellous kick. That's as good as you'll ever see. And Footscray are back in front.
From inside the centre square, boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal. From inside the centre. I can't believe that.
Hey Pack, welcome to Danny Boyd, a podcast about the most wonderful football club that has ever and will ever exist. That is the Footscray Football Club, Proprietary Limited, trading as Western Bulldogs. I'm Danny McGinlay. He's Tom Boyd.
Oh, it's a good week, mate. We are equal sixth. That's how, after a disastrous start to the season, equal sixth is officially where we're at. We're a few percentage points behind, but hey, let's semantical.
Don't worry
this time of year, mate, points are all that matter.
More wins than losses. When was the last time that happened? Probably at some point last year. But right now, more wins than losses.
More wins than losses. Yeah, I wasn't that confident we were going to be here, to be honest with you.
No,
leading into the last few weeks. But hey, we're here. We've got a good run coming up too.
We've got allegedly the low point of the season so far is losing to the Saints, and I actually texted you something that was reported in the newspapers last week about apparently Bevo went up to the team and said I'm coaching you wrong. I'm doing teach me how to coach you again. And do you think that was how it went? Or do you think that I think this was Damien Barrett reporting? So it's probably very sarcastic.
Yeah. Look. There's many different tactics that coaches take after games to maybe take a little bit off Bevo so we don't get too inside the baseball story. My dad used to always say you've got 2 sprays a year.
Yeah.
And back in the day at Nord when he was coaching the under-16s, he would go to the point at halftime when he's not getting what he wants out of his players. He'd take them into the shower area, close the door and just yell at them.
Yeah.
But you couldn't do that more than twice a year because then they'd get desensitized. They'd be like, oh, this bloke just likes yelling. So there's many different ploys that coaches use. There's the aggression. There's the, come with me. There's like the let's just pull back on training and refine and focus on the simple stuff. There's all sorts of different mechanisms. I'm not convinced Bevo asked them to teach him how to coach again. That doesn't strike me as a likely story. But I'm sure that he probably went in there maybe with his hat in hand to say it's not the time of the year to be abusing his players and trying to get them to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, it's clearly worked, whatever he did, because we're doing well. Hey, let's bring in our guest. This is genuinely one of my favourite sports writers in the country. For those with the live show, I gave her a shout-out because she was there. That's how much of a Bulldogs fan she is. I've loved her writing for so long. The Bulldog Tragician herself, Kerrie Soraghan?
It's Soraghan, yeah.
You do put the G in there, because with our weird Irish names, we're never sure.
Back in the wilds of Irish, it is Soraghan.
I'll get you right. These are cheap microphones, yes. So you got to go right up to your mouth like it's an ice cream.
It's very exciting and the perfect week to have you on, I think, after last week where we have Bont's 200th game. And to read some of the stuff that you wrote about him in the prelude to the game, what was that like? I mean, you've obviously been a Bulldogs fan for a long time. What's it like to write perhaps the 200-game synopsis of perhaps our greatest player that we've ever seen?
Yeah, it's funny because Bont, right from the start, was special, and you don't always feel that. There are players that end up playing 200, 300 games and you can't really remember anything about them, but he definitely was right from the start. And I think I said it's just been a privilege and a joy to watch him, and I do think he compares unbelievably well with others that are in the conversation for the greatest ever, and I'm pretty sure he'll go past them.
Because a lot of people don't realise how big your Bulldogs credentials are. You've written 2 books now about the Dogs. When did the blog begin? Because I want to say, for those who don't know what you were doing, what your first book was about, I want to save that for because that I know we'll get distracted by that. When did the blog begin? Because it's rare that I get excited about a blog, but whenever you publish, I read it like the instant it's published.
Oh, thanks for that. It actually started in 2013, which was not an auspicious time for the Bulldogs at all. And that
they were trying to recruit me at that stage, but that was before I got drafted.
That's what we call BC.
Yeah, that's right. And we were pretty spectacularly bad. And to be honest, that was the point of the blog. Why do fans keep going along and barracking for teams that aren't very good? I'd never seen us in a grand final. I'd been there for seasons where we only won one game, yet somehow it was always important to me to go along and to be there, and I was never quite sure why. And I suppose a lot of people would say in 2016, well, you got your answer. That was what you were going along all those years for. But I've never felt it was that. It always felt like I belonged to the club. We were part of the club. And so even on those days that it was freezing and hailing and you knew we were going to lose by triple figures, we still went along.
Yeah. I think that's what one of the great, things that the overall media landscape misses, right? Which is all of the conversations at the moment are critical conversations about who's not living up to some version of themselves that the media on that day, for one reason or another, think they should be. And it's always criticisms around, they're not performing at the level, or perhaps they've got a bad attitude, or yada, yada. And none of it seems to delve into the fact that there are people behind the jumpers that obviously play the game of footy. Is that something that's always interested you in terms of the individuals that contribute to our club rather than the performance of just footballers on the weekend?
I think when you're barracking for an unsuccessful team, you have to find other things to be interested in. And for us, I guess, we had various players that were on a pedestal. But I think when I was blogging, as I got deeper and deeper into it, there were... I thought it was just worth recording what it was like to be a fan, because we don't hear from them.
Agreed.
We don't hear from female fans in particular, and I thought that was something that I hoped I could contribute. But also, all of us fans, we do have stories stretching back. Well, in my case, I used to joke that I started barracking for them in utero, because my mother used to go every week for the 4 pregnancies, and we're just one of those families. I can't quite understand the families where my brother barracks for North Melbourne and my sister barracks for Carlton. It's just we all barracked for Footscray as they were, and it was part of
still are. Still are.
Yeah, it was part of growing up in the western suburbs. I did have a family connection that my dad played in the reserves and in the 1950s, and had one of those coulda, shoulda. He was tapped on the shoulder by Charlie Sutton and told that he was playing this week. And what did he do? But as he cycled home from his job, he got his bike tangled in the tram tracks of Gordon Street and never got selected again. So, but as I mentioned, even though he obviously had that real Footscray heritage, it was my mother who's always been the one who just loved the Dogs and never missed a game, even going and standing in the outer when she was almost 9 months pregnant just to watch them.
Is your mother still with us, or has she gone to God?
She's definitely still with it.
Oh, brilliant.
With us, yes, and I'm sure she'll be listening, and she does love Tom Boyd, of course.
Oh, yes, see? I've always been very popular. I must say that is one of the great things that I didn't realise I was signing up for. Not only to your original point about, one of the things we try and do on the show is to represent what the fan looks like, but of course the female fan is not represented in this show other than the guests that we bring on. But the thing that I didn't know when I was signing this deal to come to the Bulldogs was, one, that it was on the other side of the West Gate. That was news to me. But that was because I was 19 and grew up in Ringwood, so quite a journey.
And by the way, it's still a stickling point for us. When I said that Kerrie was coming on today, your immediate question was, where does she live? Because we either record it either at your house, which we're doing today, or your work. And you were like, no, I don't want to drive over the West Gate.
No, she needs to go over the West Gate, but she doesn't need to drive to Cremorne, because I did that trip to South Yarra. It was horrible for 18 months playing for the Bulldogs. But one of the things I've described, walking into the club, is the sense of history that you get, as in for a club that's 150 years old, you've got the banners on the wall. That was completely foreign to me. But what I didn't realise, and perhaps I'm still realising now, is the fact that not only is the Bulldogs an old club with a history, they're also a club that is incredibly refined to a very small part of Melbourne. So I'll go down and round and do public appearances all over the state. And if the question gets asked, any Bulldog supporters in the room, if I get one or two, very lucky. Yep. But if I go anywhere from Williamstown out to Melton, basically, it's 60%. that are all Bulldog supporters. It's a wild experience. And you've grown up in Footscray all of your life. Is that, do you think, one of the defining factors of why the Bulldogs are such a club that you can get behind and love and support? Because we are the team of the inner west almost.
Mighty inner west.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just been such a strong part of our identity. And I suppose I started to wonder in recent years whether that had been eroded, because Footscray and Yarraville have now become really trendy, but they certainly weren't, and I didn't know whether there was still that strong sense of place and history, but we definitely saw that in 2016, the shops that were all decorated,
Pubs.
and it just really felt like when the Dogs won the premiership in '54, that was actually my mother's second ever game as a fan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yes.
so she
Good
went.
track record.
Yes, that's right. So
She should
went,
have stopped right then.
yeah. So that's right. It's like arriving in Melbourne in the 2000s or something, and deciding I'll barrack for Brisbane or Hawthorn. So she actually, even this was how different things were. They just queued up the night before at the MCG and then just ran onto the Oval once the gates were open. So. Yeah, that sense of place is really, but she will say about that, it was really Footscray then, the whole idea that all the shops and whatever, but that was still the case in 2016, which surprised me.
I know a lot of my friends who are not Bulldog supporters, but they have moved to Footscray and Yarraville, trendy type people, but they make their kids go for the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I can see in their eyes, these are Carlton, Essendon supporters, there's a twang of jealousy.
Yeah.
That they wish that they could get behind a really, because we are I know I'm biased, but we just seem like always the feel good story.
Yes.
And what's your mum's name?
Dimpner.
Dimpner just personifies that, but the fact that she's been going every week through all the hard times, and she has made a Bulldog empire through her family.
Yes.
Love you, Dimpner.
She will absolutely be swooning when she hears this. I've made her day for once.
I'll tell you when I discovered your blog, and first of all, I'm going to say you talk about being the female fan. I read you for about 2 years before I realised you were female. I just read a fan's voice and probably patriarchally assumed you were male. And
That's very interesting, because I've definitely seen lots of stuff which was, I love his writing, or that guy really gets us, and it is quite amusing. But I did sort of come out in public when I wrote the book which compiled most of the stories. From
you mean this book right here that I'm hoping you'll sign my copy of?
Yes, I will definitely sign your copy of that.
It's such a good book. I love it. It's a real, that and Martin Flanagan's Wink from the Universe. I would say the two seminal works on the 2016 premiership, just for getting it and understanding the journey we were all on. I'll tell you, sorry, but I'm going to tell you when I discovered you. You wrote a brilliant piece after probably the highlight of the 2014 season, Boydie, which is
The last game? That was when we played in the last game of the year.
Not that one. Not that one. It was when we knocked off Collingwood. It was a rainy, freezing Sunday afternoon twilight game. I did want to go. My son was 4 months old then, and my wife sort of requested I stay home rather than come home drunk and angry, because Collingwood were definitely going to win. And I remember watching it with my in-laws, my Ukrainian in-laws, who would quite tolerant of the man screaming and yelling at the TV at them. And it was the sort of day. Boydie, you're too young for this, but you'll appreciate this.
2014, no, I was there. Yeah.
No, but I'm talking from a fan perspective. When the Bulldogs would have a great win, you wouldn't just buy the Age. You'd buy the Age and the Herald. And if it was a brilliant win, you'd buy the Australian. That was a day that I bought all three papers the next day. And then I went trawling, looking for something, just more. Tell me more about this game where we knocked off Collingwood. And through Googling, I found your brilliant take on that horrible day. And you were like the only Bulldogs fans there.
It certainly felt like it. Though in the last quarter, when we were actually winning, but it seemed like Collingwood will just steamroll us. This is going to be one of those gallant losses. We nearly got there. But
get rid of Che de Nullis as the Latin phrase.
Yeah.
Whatever Latin for honourable defeat is.
Yeah.
Not quite good enough.
Yeah. But I do remember that day because it was one where, you know, my family and I were sending texts around like, oh, are we going to go? We probably should. Yeah. It certainly wasn't, wow, I can't wait. We thought we were going to get annihilated and we didn't. We won and we saw one of Bont's, that was the first win that Bont played in.
Oh, good.
He'd actually played in 5 losses, including to the Gold Coast Suns, and they were pretty bad.
Yep. Sounds like the start of my career as well. Not as good individually, but very similar.
Yeah.
Were you as honourable, though, at GWS?
Yeah. I think... No, we weren't. No.
By the way, Damnum Honorificum
is what it is.
That's Latin.
Just about everyone smashed us back then.
Yeah. But I called the blog We Came, We Saw, We Believed, because it was that sort of feeling that sometimes you just had to go. Even if you thought we were going to lose, you just had to be there. And I still, even after 10 years of blogging, I'm not quite sure why I feel that, but it's just built into me. And maybe it is because one day you will see, you might get smashed, but you've seen that first little glimpse of a player who's going to make it, or you just know when the good times come, you'll actually feel, okay, I was there for the bad times too.
Yeah, you want to be smug at the other fans.
Yeah, but I think that's something really unique to sport, because if it was a really bad concert, you wouldn't go, I'm going to keep going every week because...
Until they work it out,
Yeah, and that's why when the AFL call it a product or an industry, I think, well, if you call it that and it's only about being entertained, I wouldn't have sat there all those times we lost by 100 points, because that wasn't entertaining and it wasn't enjoyable
for the other team either, you know.
Yeah, and it was just, you know, but so it was actually interesting when we did become good that I had been blogging for the times which were not so good. In fact, were absolutely awful and we were pretty bad during the BMAC years.
Yes.
We were awful. We were hard to watch. It wasn't just that we lost. Like Hawthorn lost on the weekend, but I thought they were still entertaining.
Yeah.
We just lost in a very boring,
it was a very dour time for the Bulldogs.
There were times where we just got 4 goals or something.
It was damn dishonorific.
And they were just such hard work.
And that was, I think, that's a genuine reason why when Bevo came in, it was such a breath of fresh air for the guys, because, you know, I lived through my best memories of the Bulldogs as not a Bulldog supporter is those prelims, like watching Nathan Eagleton and Brad Johnson.
9, 10.
That was a highlight of my junior sporting career, because I'd gotten to the point, as a fan, because I'd gotten to the point where I was now watching the game thinking, hey, I want to play AFL footy. This is what AFL footy looks like. And it was fast-paced, it was high-scoring. And then, you know, BMAC comes in and he's all about sort of fundamentals and, you know, hard contested ball, and everyone's a tagger.
Yeah.
And when I think Bevo arrived, it was like, you mean we have the freedom to try new things and to do what we want to do as players? And I'm not a tagger anymore. Liam Picken being the easiest one to think about in that regard. It was just a massive weight off the shoulders, I think, for so many players.
Yeah, I will just correct you on one thing, Boydie, and Kerrie will agree with me. Those 08, 09, 10 prelims were the worst. The worst games of football.
What about the seasons before those?
Seasons before were fantastic. Yeah, actually, what was great just on Saturday is before the match, they showed the first quarter of that famous 2009 game where we were thumping Hawthorn by like 100 points by halftime. They didn't score a goal in the first half, and I'm just rewatching that. And something we as Dogs fans often forget, and actually I was going to ask you, Kerrie, about, you seem to love all the players, but there is, when I watch highlights of 08, 09, 10, my eyes are always drawn to Jason Ackermanis. And I know he wasn't a great teammate apparently, but as a fan, my God, he did some amazing things. So, Kerrie, you do seem to love everyone. Do you ever have negative...
I think I did draw the line at him. I can remember when they thrashed us in one of those finals up in Brisbane, and he did his handstand at the end of the game while, you know, they'd absolutely thrashed us, and Scott Wind was sort of being chaired off somewhere in the distance. And I think you do feel a little bit different. Maybe, I can probably say I've never not loved a player who's come up through our ranks, but some of those that have come in from another club, present company obviously accepted, it can be a little bit harder to feel that same affection for them and feel that we're part of their stories. And there is another peroxided player at the moment for the Bulldogs that I'm also struggling to feel that same affection for. So I don't know, you still... They all somehow seem to look better when they're in our colours, and suddenly you try and find something to like about them. I find when I clap Rory Lobb, it's just kind of, yep, clap. It's not sort of, it's all about if you can do lukewarm clapping, I'm doing that basically.
So if you got a jumper right now, say you got the new, by the way, did you see the Indigenous jumper?
I did.
That is fantastic. That's the best one we've ever done.
I think our colours are the best for the Indigenous jersey.
Yeah.
But we struggle because there's, the Bulldog isn't a native animal. So there's not like great Indigenous artwork of Bulldogs that we can work off. However, they've sort of ignored that. Have you seen it, Kerrie?
They've ignored them I think they've ignored that fact every year. I don't think we've ever tried to do a Bulldog, have we?
Well, so we've gone the opposite, and now we've just put eels on there, which is a reference to the Maribyrnong River.
Yep.
I think I'm going to get one. So if you were going to get one of those, Kerrie, what number would you put on the back?
Look, it's hard to go past Bont, isn't it? I think he would definitely still be my favourite.
Or are you claiming it's a Daniel Cross number? Or hang on, I can go more obscure number 4s.
That was very funny because
Michael Ford.
Often I have really loved the unspectacular player. They've been my favourite.
Darren Davies?
Not quite. But when the club bundled Daniel Cross out, I was really quite upset and made all these ridiculous statements that I would never ever love someone in number 4 again. And then Bontempelli took the jumper, and I found myself kind of slowly warming to the guy.
It's hard not to. Yeah. If he doesn't get you with brilliance, just the consistency of brilliance will get you eventually. 200 games. How many bad games has Bond played in 200 games? Probably bad, like none. Maybe not having an impact, like 7.
Yeah. Actually, it's probably someone who can do the hard deep dive on those stats.
We should get Chaz to do that.
Of course,
that would be good because, I remember a couple of games where Bont was playing sore and maybe had 15 touches, excluding his first year. But other than that, I think that might be it. It's just a ridiculous thing to say.
We were vaguely disappointed that he didn't dominate on Saturday, but he still had 10 contested possessions. He's still always going to be doing something amazing.
And he's had the perfect season today. Consider it as an individual contributor, it's been just remarkable how many games he's kept us in by his single hand and foot.
It would have been nice, just thinking about the poetry of the fixture, if maybe he'd sat out against Hawthorn and played his 200th against GWS.
But we couldn't be there then.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
All right. It was really quite a great crowd on Saturday.
It was packed.
Yeah, for a pretty ordinary time slot. I personally don't like that time at all.
I was saying the same thing. I can't stand it. 4:20 is such a weird time to watch the footy.
Yeah, it's a little bit of nothing, isn't it?
Well, the thing I love when you play the first half in daylight, second half in darkness. I love that. But roof's closed.
Yeah, so you don't even get that feeling of the lights.
Yeah.
When we played Richmond a couple of weeks ago, it was that sort of thing that the sky goes a bit purple, and it's quite lovely.
And obviously it's all about me. So I've got a 1-year-old who naps till 4:20, and then she's up.
That should be reason enough to change it.
If it was 7:20, she'd be about to go to sleep. I get an unadulterated 4 quarters of footy.
Actually, with my 9-year-old, the annoying thing is the game finishes and we've got to go home to bed. His bedtime's like 8:30, so you got to just get on the tram. It's really annoying. All right, Kerrie, let's talk about your other book, because The Mighty West, fantastic, seminal work. Your other book, Fight Back, because you were at the coalface of what was up until 2016 the greatest achievement of the club.
Yeah, it's probably an underrated achievement too, because I think people don't realise we weren't down and out, we were out. We were no longer existed as an entity. We weren't just sort of clinging on by our fingernails. And really to have 1.4 million, I think it was, raised in 3 weeks back then, it was just quite staggering.
Yes,
And
someone measured that for inflation. Is that like
10 million bucks.
10 million?
No,
Wow.
I don't know, but it'd be something like that.
You work with accountants, I believe you.
yeah.
It'd be a 5 or more, for sure.
Yeah. And given that the people who were mainly doing that were the western suburbs people, who, a lot of them, there were all those tales of people with their giving, rattling the coins, and, it really was quite incredible and very, very moving to see what the club meant to people and to see the efforts people would go to save it. So it was a pretty extraordinary time.
And what was it? Just like, was it something you felt compelled to, help out with, or was it just, I have no choice? This is like, it'd be like if your child breaks its leg, you of course run in and you take it to a hospital.
There was definitely no choice. It was, but I also didn't have any great hope that we could succeed. And it was quite extraordinary to even arrive at the Western Oval for the rally that day. We sort of didn't know whether there'd be maybe 300 people there. And instead there were 10,000 and people crying, and it was just quite extraordinary, the depth of feeling that there was. And and every now and then when there's sort of a loss that's not too good, or a time that you don't feel so positive about the club, I will think, well, at least I'm not waking up to a headline that says "Death of the Bulldogs," which is what was on the front page of the Herald.
Was that the first? Like, there would have been sirens, there would have been signs that the apocalypse is coming, or was it just wake up? Oh, hang on, what? We got a fight on our hands.
Oh no, there were definitely signs, but it was probably more about they'll make us move from the Western Oval, or. Yeah, I didn't think that we would, because we were perennially broke, we were perennially no good. So, I don't think it was very real, and it was a lot of people said it was like a death in the family, and that sounds ridiculous, but it was. It just, the thought that we wouldn't be there in the competition anymore, it's hard to imagine. I think it's underestimated too that if we hadn't won that, how many other clubs would have gone out of business? Yeah. Because there was definitely, they never tried to forcefully merge a club again. That was...
Except for Fitzroy in Brisbane.
Well, yeah. But even with...
Relocating, we're calling those.
Yeah. Right. It was... I still didn't agree with it, but I think there was a bit more dignity about it than what they tried to do to us. So, I think... it was just an incredible time, really.
I actually think death in the family is not an overstatement. And the reason for that is when someone passes that you love, like the thing for me that always lasts is you want to pick up the phone and call them, or you want to do what you had great memories from with them again. And if a football club like the Bulldogs isn't, it ceases to be no more in a place like Footscray, like every weekend, people during football season, people are going to look around with this sense of hopelessness on their face.
Yes.
And I think, whilst, we were educated on the Bulldogs' history when we arrived at the football club. They give you sort of a walkthrough of the museum. They talk you through sort of what had happened and the fight back and not so much the prelims. They weren't bragging about that at that stage. But I think one of the things that I've really tried to reinforce with people around my experience through the 2016 series in particular is the fact that what you need to understand about Footscray is obviously the localism that we've already talked about, the, quite scarce resources that people had in that suburb, and the fact that they were still willing to give it up to keep that footy club alive is one of the very distinct reasons, and maybe it's more representative of the love of the club rather than just the importance of them giving up the money. But it's one of the main reasons I find that the supporter group who were there for 16 and had been there for a long time are incredibly grateful and incredibly, admiring of the players who obviously played on the day. And obviously we're one very small part of us getting to that point. But it has been something that has never been lost on me, is just the conversations you get to have with people who've been lifelong Bulldogs fans. It's quite scary. I mean, Danny's kind of, he's actually met me now, so he's sort of lost a bit of love. But but when I first met him, Danny he was quite overbearing in his love for the time that we had at the Bulldogs together.
I I'm sort of interested in that though, Tom, about what sense did you have of the Bulldogs' history in terms of, because there were times I felt that it was a burden to the players, to previous generations of players, that wanting it so badly, and every year that the drought went on, I sort of felt that there were in lots, that honestly I think some of the other sides who didn't make grand finals had just as much talent, maybe a little bit more in some cases, but I sort of felt like guys like Brad Johnson and Chris Grant almost wore it as a burden, the feeling of we've got to be the ones to break this curse.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a generational thing. I mean, I think that there's, Chris and Brad and Luke Darcy and those, I think those guys existed in a time where there was the overlap of the part-time footballer into the full-time footballer. They either got there right at the end of the part-time footballer or had just a couple of years. And I think that sense of how much players were giving up to play footy at that stage, where they were still working another job, it wasn't easy to juggle the two. They were trying to obviously, make money and play footy and look after families and all that sort of stuff. Once I arrived at the footy club, my generation is probably not as ingratiated in Footscray as players had been previously, where, we were now doing appearances and community outreach in Warrnambool and in Ballarat and in these far-reaching parts of the western suburbs or the western part of Victoria more accurately.
Warrnambool's a very western
suburb. It's a western suburb. Definitely western suburb of Victoria.
I think, look, if we're fair, it's Eastern Adelaide.
Yeah. But that whole concept of us being, as stuck in the west in Footscray wasn't as clear. But having said that, the moments where we got to do those events around Footscray were always the best, right? Because we go to West Footscray Primary School, or we go down to Williamstown North Primary School, where I did my first ever appearance of the Bulldogs, and it's like, oh, this is a Bulldogs part of town. And I think the other thing is that you get to a certain point where the professionalism of football is so high, and the club's in a pretty good position. We're now sort of talking about the fact that we have no debt. Now they're doing a massive, tens of millions of dollars of renovation. We're not the underdogs off the field that we probably once were. And I never got the sense that our players at the time had the desire to, end the drought. We didn't speak about it a lot. We spoke about what we could control, all the things that were important to us, and that was the majority of our thinking at that stage, I think.
I always think it's interesting. It's like we're going along, the fans, with all our stories and all the things we're hoping for. And we were there for those 7 preliminary final losses, and you guys weren't. But there's this sort of interaction. There was the fact that you guys didn't seem daunted by it. I mean, I still think sometimes I saw 7 losing preliminary finals, yet I somehow still got in my car and drove 9 hours to Sydney, hoping that this would be, it's quite amazing, really.
Yeah. And I think, football is so professional these days. It's such a big business. And I know, to your point, we too, I think, hate the productizing of the game and the players, but it is part of it. Yeah. And it's undeniable to be part of it when you're involved in it, because, I'm talking to the CEO, I'm talking to the media people, I'm talking to the brands and the sponsors, and there's all this stuff we've got to do other than just go out and play 4 good quarters of footy. And I think once we were able to, I suppose, unlock the optimism of the western suburbs, in particular after that first finals against West Coast, that's when I think we got the best of both worlds, which was we didn't have to deal with all the corporatized bullshit. All we got to deal with was the fans who wanted us so badly to do well, and the positivity that surrounded that was undeniably part of the wave that we rode. And we also didn't have to train, so whenever we were out on the ground, we were just basically kicking footies around in front of thousands of fans, which was pretty awesome too.
But it's interesting you call it the wave, because that's what it felt like. It felt like we were somehow carrying you along, but you were carrying us. So it was quite different from the feeling that I had previously. It felt like we were a part of it, whereas in previous times I thought we might be part of the problem almost by wanting it so much and talking about it so much. And,
I think momentum was a huge part of it. At the end of 2016, undeniably, I think that we were undervalued in terms of how good our team was by the broader public. And yes, we finished 7th, which is awesome because it sounds awesome at stat sheet being the first team ever to win from 7th. But at the same time, we were a top 4 side that just didn't make the top 4, which sounds silly, and every side can say that every year.
It's been us for a decade.
Yeah, pretty much, right? And when going into that, after we beat West Coast, I can honestly say that I never went into any of the remaining 3 finals thinking we were ever going to lose, which is a crazy place to be given we're underdogs in all 3 of them. But that just blind positivity is what works.
But that's what amazes me because, we've all got the Danny from Droop Street misery about us. And yet, when I think of grand final week, I don't remember thinking, are we going to win or even are we going to lose? Or it was just pure joy, really. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Was it? People say that the fight back was worth 4 premierships. Now that you've experienced both, how many premierships is a fight back worth?
Oh, that's quite a hard question, isn't it? I think
what's the exchange rate?
Yeah, I don't know because the premiership, those 4 weeks, I kind of think they were like 4 jewels. They were there. They were each of them. When you and Tom did the review and we watched all those finals.
Well done, great wording.
Yeah,
legally review.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Each of them was so special and had highlights, but saving the club was more like it was relief. It was, it was pride. It was a whole lot of things, but it didn't have that one moment that you went, wow.
Oh, wasn't there?
Liam Pickens kicked that goal and we're premiers,
Wasn't there the court decision or how long was the fight back on for? Because I was 7.
Yeah.
So my memory is
-6.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it was over. It was 3 weeks. So there was the announcement basically that we'd merged, and and it was pretty much we're gone. Then there was the realisation that there was this bit of a loophole that in the way that we'd surrendered or that we hadn't surrendered our licence. It was kind of a little legal
sovereignty was never ceded.
Yeah, it was almost exactly like that. So we were given 3 weeks, I think, to raise the money, which Ross Oakley and co were kind of just smirking, thinking that'll never happen. And so then a couple of days later there was the rally and it all got started. And what you were saying before, Tom, it was definitely something that Peter Gordon said at the rally about imagine what it's going to feel like next season when the fixture's announced and there's no Footscray. Imagine what it's going to be like when we never see our jumpers on TV. And that was very powerful, just that sense of
it's a good speech.
loss. Yeah. Yes, it was.
And when they announced the court decision that we were going to survive, was that like the best I can imagine is it was like that final scene at the castle, of just a courtroom erupting. And
yeah, no, it was actually the other way around, Danny. So the court case was about giving us that 3 weeks to fundraise.
Oh, okay. So the court case was at the start.
Yeah, so there's then, I suppose the closest to the victorious moment was the AFL Commission. I think they were the Commission then anyway. They had to meet to basically say, God damn it, they did raise the money and we've got to let them back into the competition. So, there wasn't this, tear-jerking finale so much as there were just lots of little moments.
But surely when you're counting the money, when that final $20 note just...
Yeah, there was a bit of that. And there was a funny little...
the final 20-cent piece.
Is it attached to a card addressed to Chris Grant?
Well, on the front of the book about the fight back, there's a little boy. Have you seen it?
I haven't. No, I don't know. I would love to get a copy. Where can we get these?
I think I might have one rattling around at home.
I think you might get a few requests after this pod goes out.
Put a few more secondary print, I think.
So there's this little boy looking terribly incredibly tragic with freckles and wearing his Bulldog jumper and holding, this little bowl of coins that he'd brought along to the rally, which was incredibly tear-jerking. It was actually my son.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, and that boy grew up to be Liam Pickett.
And that really sad expression. He kind of always looked a little bit like that. So, yeah.
I think we've got to make a telly movie of the fight back. This is just...
So, Ross Oakley...
Yes.
Oakley, he was the commissioner at the time, right?
Yes.
AFL commissioner.
People forget his name was Ross because we all just call him Up Yours Oakley.
I was about to say, I can't imagine he frequented the Footscray pubs after this whole debacle. And also, if we're going to cast a telly series, we're going to have to work out someone to play him, which if we're going to dramatise it, that is.
I'm happy to play a villain just to get a role. I mean, obviously, obviously all Hemsworths are just playing.
I think we just get Ralph Fiennes, the guy who did Voldemort, to play with us.
Sounds good to me.
So these books, I hope we can get them out. Is The Mighty West still in print?
Yeah, it's still...
These on your website?
It's still available. Yeah, it's Black Ink Books. But yes, I think people know where to. It's in all good
We'll put
bookshops.
it in the podcast link.
Okay, thank
we
you.
We will definitely. I read somewhere that a lot of the reason the Bulldogs were saved was due to the Vietnamese community in Footscray at the time.
Yeah, that when you're talking about the climactic moment. When we knew that the club had been saved, there was actually a little bit of a procession from the Western Oval, which was quite ragtag, into the Footscray Mall, and I can remember there were a few shopkeepers coming out sort of saying, what's going on? They were Vietnamese, and there was actually the Hyde Street Band, of course, playing Sons of the... Sons of the Spray then. And
do you know what the Hyde Street Band is, Boydie, by the way?
I've heard the name, but no, not really.
They were a group of volunteers, and they had a big drum, a trumpet, and
at half time they used to march around the oval with this large sheet, and people would throw coins to them, and they were quite funny.
Awesome, isn't it?
But anyway,
several of them died due to concussion.
Well, it was quite a dangerous practice. OH&S, definitely not. But anyway, one Vietnamese shopkeeper turned to the other and said, what are they playing? And the other one said quite authoritatively, I think it's the national anthem. Yeah, there was definitely a lot of community, and it actually felt like you certainly see all different nationalities at the footy, and I do think that was part of it for us.
Yeah, there's nothing I love more than seeing a new Australians, like be they African or Asian or Middle Eastern, just all wearing Bulldogs gear. I'm like, yes, you're part
come
of
on,
us.
come all.
Yes, absolutely. I've one more just on the Vietnamese community and talking movies. My brain. You were. I don't know. Do you remember in 1992 the film Romper Stomper comes out, which is not a positive view of Footscray. For those who don't know it, it's a film with Russell Crowe, one of his first films, about racist Nazi skinheads having a gang war against the Vietnamese. However, Russell Crowe plays the main character, the villain, Hando. He wears a Footscray jumper in some of the scenes. He's about in the most racist stuff, and he's wearing a Bulldogs hoodie. Was there any reaction to the club from that?
I don't have any memory of that, actually.
And the opposite is where the mystery, and if anyone knows anything about how this happened, I did some research once during lockdown, and sadly the person who seemed to be responsible has since passed on. But the 6th episode of Degrassi Junior High,
I know this one,
has a Bulldogs jumper in it, and that episode won an Emmy. It's the one where Spike gets pregnant. Does anyone know how a Footscray jumper with a VFL logo got into a Canadian teen drama?
With Drake.
With Drake in it and Alanis Morissette.
Yeah.
And if anyone knows, please hit us up, these mysteries. All right, running out. So we play the Giants on... who would be your least favourite team? Is it the Giants or is it someone else?
It certainly was for a long time, because it felt that they sort of represented everything that we weren't, that they were manufactured, that they didn't have that history, that emotion, that, they were sort of the product of a PowerPoint presentation. So, yeah, didn't like them all that much.
Focus groups. Yeah.
Yeah, and it absolutely felt like you couldn't have scripted it better that it was our two teams that would play off that year, given that sort of history. But no, I have to. Essendon are definitely my most loathed team, and that probably does go back to that. Our biggest ever loss was against Essendon, and I don't know if I was there, but I feel I was there. And their supporters are really vile, in my opinion. The could-have-beens call them Collingwood supporters who can read and write. And but yeah, there's something nasty about that club. I just, and maybe it was because we were sort of just across the river from them, but they really had pretensions that they were much better than us. So yeah, they've always been my most loathed team.
I appreciate that you didn't make mention of the fact that the Giants stole half of our favourite sons to go up there and play football for them as well.
We stole one back, and that's all that matters.
Well, yeah. I wasn't Callan Ward or Leon Cameron, who'd been at the club for 25
or
years.
Dylan Addison.
Or Ryan Griffin.
Israel Folau was going to play for us, totally.
Yep.
One of the things that I really, really hated was when Ryan Griffin went to the club, and he, Callan Ward, and Leon Cameron posed for that photo saying
Lost Dogs Home or
Lost
something?
Dogs Home, and they were life members of our club. I didn't like that one little bit. So yeah, for a long time they were particularly when they were. I mean, it's levelled out a little bit, I suppose, that rivalry.
I actually respect them. I love having them as a rival, and I respect them, and I always want to beat them, but I don't have that visceral kind of rage when we haven't lost to him in so long. That's probably,
and all those guys, barring Callan, are sort of gone by the wayside now. And also, in maybe their defence, I presume, I'm not sure about this, but I presume they didn't write that headline about Lost Dogs Home. It just sucks to.
I totally realise that it wasn't their idea, but I would have liked to think maybe they would have said, no, I don't really feel like doing that. Yeah. But obviously that's,
I'm pretty sure that was like an AFL media thing or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's part of trying to build something up and character and whatever, but yeah.
Made for a good rivalry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely did. There was a really... I definitely felt a lot of angst towards them and really loved it that the first time we played them after Ryan Griffin left, we won.
We did, yes.
And he didn't play well, though I also feel a lot of empathy for him as well in that whole situation.
I agree. I actually want to pitch an idea to you, Boydie. We have our meetings on air.
Yes.
I've got an idea for an episode. It's called Villain's Side of the Story. And I want to interview Ryan Griffin and hear his side of things, and so we can empathise with him. Because I want to think of another
don't call
villain.
it Villain Side of the Story if you want to empathise with him.
Well, no, but I want him to be able to.
But if you want him to get on and realise that it's a good story,
I want to be a positive thing, because I also want to interview, and I think I've got a link to this person, the goal umpire from the 97 prelim, Kerrie. What do you think of that? I want to hear what he reckons when Libba kicked the winning goal, why he wrongly...
Maybe he'll be unveiled as a Ross Oakley stooge of some kind. That'd just...
We're going to need security for that one.
No, I'm going to be all positive.
No, you're not. You've abused this unnamed person hundreds of times on this show.
That's why I want to let them have their say. What do you think? What do you reckon?
Good luck. Good luck, yeah, genuinely.
All right, okay. Well, it's
a good idea. I mean, it'd be great, but tough interviews to sign, I think.
Well, it's not a gotcha. It's not a, what do they call that in like current affairs media, where it's a trap or something. It's none of that. No, I want to just chat to him, and because I loved Ryan Griffin for us, and look, I've got actually no ill will. If they'd beaten us in 2016,
big story, bit different.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's always so many if onlys, because as it turned out, it felt like his leaving ended up being the thing that delivered us 2016.
Exactly.
But often in footy, it isn't like that. You like to think that, everything happens for a reason, and sometimes it's just...
And he knew.
Crap.
He knew what he was doing. He was like Gandalf in Lord of the Rings.
Fire, you fools! He started it.
He's a Bulldogs hero.
I signed a new lease in Sydney. True story. I was staying in Sydney for 12 more months before we tried to renegotiate again at the end of that year. And then Griffin asked for a trade, and we're like, let's have a go.
Yeah.
So I think you can ask, who wins this week? Obviously us, but by how much?
Yep. And who do you want to see have a great game?
I'm never one to say by how much, because there were actually people before the Hawthorn game saying we would win by over 100 points.
I don't know who you're talking about. What are you on about?
Him. Sorry for the listeners at home. I'm pointing distinctly at Dana McGinley.
No, I'm the person who, as my sister and I drove to the ground, she said, I've got a bad feeling about today. So, yeah, we're a little bit like that. We should win, but, you know, there is... So long as Toby Green's out there, unfortunately, there is always,
I want to give credit. Okay, there's another villain, Toby Green. I want to give him credit. He, in the last few years, almost post-COVID, has really got rid of a lot of the negative aspects of his game. And, you know, when they beat the Swans on the weekend, it was he did some amazing things. You know, people change. He's matured. Look, Kerrie has such a grimace on her face.
I'm giving you that look, Danny, like, stop talking crap.
I did see this tweet come up before, actually, just on this topic. It said, do you think this will be finally the week that Luke Beveridge put some time and effort into stopping Toby Green? Because in the 13 games versus the Bulldogs, he's kicked 35 goals, averaging almost 3 a game. Oh, he's had 19 goal assists, an average of 1.5. And last year, he had 21 disposals, 7 goals, 2, and 3 goal assists.
So who would you put on him?
That's a good question. Too small.
Do we remember who played on him last year? Who was the sacrificial lamb?
I thought we had my memory is we had a really easy win against them last year.
We did, but
he's dominated against us every time we played him. He's so hard to match up on because he's got such a big spring in his jump, so you can't play someone tiny on him. But then you got to get someone who can keep up with him, which is just as hard.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who we have back there.
And we'll just win the game. It's fine.
Who would you play on him? I don't know. I honestly don't know who to play on him.
The ones I've heard suggested are Duray and Richards, but I don't think we've got a good matchup.
No, I think he's got both of them for height and marking capability. But having said that, you know, the Bulldogs, fundamentally have always been a team defensive side.
Yeah.
And obviously, we don't want Toby to kick 7 because it means it's likely they're going to have a better game. But if he kicks 7 and we win, at the end of the day, it's like...
Which is what happened last year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So...
Well, Kerrie, is there anything else you would like to plug or anything you'd like to mention? Now you have the Bulldogs audience here for you. I mean, please subscribe to Bulldogs Tradition. Or is it Bulldog Tragician?
Bulldog,
is it singular?
Singular Tradition blog. Yes, you can subscribe and you'll get I must admit I don't blog as regularly as I used to. I try and wait till I've got something that I think is worth saying.
You will never last in the AFL media with that attitude, young lady.
No, that's right.
You've got to come up with a hot take every week.
That's right. But, you know, as you probably noticed, my blogs aren't even really about the games a lot of the time. So
it's usually quite a motherly love of players. I loved your one about Jamara, by the way, when he first started, and how much hope we have for him. And, man, he is living up to expectations.
And that is, again, a very strong feeling that you have as a fan of protectiveness towards the players. And even with young Bont, I wrote a blog when, you know, his 5th or 6th game, and just was sort of imagining, there'll be a time when you're injured, there'll be a time when the fans turn on you, there'll be times where it's not just a big adventure. And, you know, I kind of love seeing that unfold, but I also feel it's very sad sometimes to, you know, end up being booed, or not that I don't think anyone's ever possibly booed Bont, but But
no, not Bont.
I mean, but there are times when people are critical, or, you know, why didn't he, or, you know, blah. So it's lovely, the starts of careers, which we see with someone like Artie Jones at the moment. Just
that was so good.
That he's just so happy to be playing footy. He's just a kid. Yeah.
Yeah.
I interviewed Dom Bedendo before the game in the Top Dogs area. What a lovely lad he is. I really hope he gets a go. He's only played 2 games, none of them in Victoria, both horrible losses. But got a goal, and he was a bit shy at the start of the interview, but he just really came out of his shell. And, man, I just wish we could play 50 players every week.
Yeah, I'm sure West Coast do too, but they've only got 20 to 8 available.
Fun. I'm actually playing for West Coast this week. So this is the art I was going to talk about for you fine folk. You may have noticed at the end of episodes this year, we've had a different song. It's actually the last 2 years. First year we did this pod, we had a band called Paper Jane who had a song called Footscray. But my brother, Hugh McGinley, actually wrote... He said he had an idea for a song, because he's a folk singer, and he sort of just wrote the thing we've been using as the end credits for this. It's finally done as a song. It's a few people have contacted me on the pod social saying the song makes them cry, because it is about a parent and their child's relationship with the Bulldogs and grief and loss and all that. It's finally done. We're going to finish the episode with the whole song, so it's a slightly longer episode. Boy, do you have anything to plug before?
No, mate, no. Can't wait to listen to this song.
This should be good. And by the way, if you're in Sydney, Sydney Comedy Festival next weekend, I'm there at the Enmore Theatre. Perth Comedy Festival, Friday the 19th. After that, would love to see the Danny Boyd people there. Bulldog Tradition. Kerrie, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Kerrie.
Thank you so much.
Here's the song, Dogs of Footscray Streets by Hugh McGinley.
I gave my childhood to that roar of the red, white and blue sea, and the knowledge that you had two loves, the Bulldog boys and me. 20 years on, I feel that longing hanging in September air. But the reason I go every week is to pretend you're still there. And they will find the glory one day, and I will throw it at your feet. It's a long, long road they're running for you, the dogs of Footscray Streets. Gave your lifetime to my childhood, working all those factories. But the only time I heard you yell was when they ran out on the G. You kept your problems close, your loyalty stark, and you never lost the cause. And the blueprint that you left me with was just what a father was. And of course there were hard times, no one called life or footy fair. And you would look me in the eye some nights and say, care, you have to care. But for every loss and victory, and for every train and bus, was the knowledge that come Saturday, the dogs could run for us. It's a long, long road they're running for you, the dogs of Footscray Streets. It's a long, long